a vivid reminder of how war has changed in late modernity. While new wars, as Mary Kaldor calls them, have a more enduring continuity with former conflicts than the term suggests, it is incontrovertible that war has been transformed. And this is highlighted so tragically in Ukraine. There is no longer a set battlefield between clearly identifiable combatants marked off from the rest of society. Innocent citizens are now targets. Social and domestic infrastructure gets indiscriminately bombed, and human bodies become battle sites with degradations inflicted on women, children, and the elderly. Weaponry is sophisticated and makes no distinction in whom it injures and kills. But also, technological weapons have also reappeared in the 21st century in the form of swords, machetes, and the human bomb. I think this is obvious, but the Ukrainian war discloses a second truth about the changing nature of warfare in late modernity. It evokes a profoundly moral response. The injuries are also moral ones, not in the sense that they offend the moral code of the perpetrator, which is the contemporary meaning of moral injury. They're moral injuries by provoking moral outrage in victims and those looking on as bystanders. War crimes are legal entities because they offend morality. Now, the moral landscape of war has shifted in line with cultural changes in how we respond to suffering. We should not overstate this, however. Late modernity is full of moral contradictions. The rise of authoritarian populism, xenophobia, and anti-immigrant racism exists alongside empathy to what Boltanski calls the distant stranger. Philanthropic and charitable giving is at its height, while also migrant babies drown on British seashores. Distant strangers evoke moral empathy, it seems, only so long as they remain distant. People are clearly making moral judgments about victims. We see this in the contrast in the moral response towards Ukrainian war refugees and, say, Syrian or Afghanistan migrants. We open our homes to the former, but keep the latter at a longer distance. Now, in my new book, An Advanced Introduction to the Sociology of Peace Processes, the changing nature of warfare and its moral landscape form part of several structural and material conditions that have shaped a growing sociological interest in peace. Now, other structural and moral features include the extremely violent form of global capitalism that exacerbates competition and conflict between nation states and in internal conflicts over the control of the nation state. We see it in intensified economic inequalities and wealth disparities between the global north and the global south, and indeed within the global north, amongst those left behind by the social and economic policies of neoliberalism. We have at the same time an increase in moral sensibility to suffering and increased moral innovation and moral degradation of our enemies. We are both sensitive to the suffering of others and fearful of them. We show greater levels of emotional empathy to people just like ourselves, but draw ever more rigid moral boundaries to exclude those who are different. Now, these material and structural conditions have had a profound effect on social science treatments of war and peace, leading to what I call the re-enchantment of the social sciences. Moral sensibility is again in vogue, both as a topic of study by social scientists and as an ethical commitment that we are encouraged to make as social scientists and bring to our work. Thus, we have now studies of vulnerability, of emotion, anger, love, compromise, suffering, and the like. And we give voice to social science as a public good, as having public value. And this permits us to make moral judgments as social scientists, and of course, not just about war and peace. Now, significantly, this re-enchantment of the social sciences in late modernity has opened up an intellectual space for the emergence of the sociology of peace processes. There is thus, if you like, a political economy lying behind the re-enchantment of the social sciences that has given peace a chance. Now, this re-enchantment should shape sociology's understanding of peace. Peace has to be more than just the vague notion of reconciliation. It must run deeper than technical practices of transitional justice. The sociological definition of peace developed in my book sees it as the restoration of moral sensibility. Now, this moral sensibility involves a sense of social solidarity after conflict, a sense of social togetherness, which is embedded in the restoration of sociability. The restoration of social solidarity, a sense of social togetherness, the restoration of sociability, and the capacity to live together in tolerance. So this alliteration, sensibility, solidarity, sociability, are mediated, however, by social justice. Continued social injustice stymies moral sensibility and all its alliterations. Now, the realization of this sort of peace is not easy. And the book outlines a typology of peace processes aimed to deliver it, all of which face huge difficulties in facilitating peace. But the book discusses new concepts that the sociology of peace processes illuminates. Concepts like the sociology of compromise, the sociology of post-conflict emotions that furnishes us with sociologies of anger, sociologies of forgiveness, a sociology of mercy, a sociology of hope, and a sociology of social trust. But it also illuminates concepts like the sociology of everyday life peace building, and indeed the sociology of personal trauma. And all these concepts that are opened up in the sociology of peace process, they all relate, however, to the, if you like, the signal conclusion of the sociology of peace processes. And that is that learning to live together after conflict should be understood as a moral duty, garnering a sense of moral sensibility towards erstwhile enemies. Peace is too important to be left to politicians. Peace becomes everybody's responsibility within a sociological definition of peace.